All right, thanks so much, Emily. As she mentioned, I'm Chase. I'm a product marketing manager for Status Page here at Atlassian. So Status Page is the communication piece of your incident management process, and today we're going to be going over the basics of incident management, as well as some best practices, and also some general tips and tricks around how you can use our portfolio to handle those incidents a little bit better. To start, we can dive into incident management and what it really is. So here at Atlassian, we define an incident as an event that causes a disruption to or a reduction in the quality of a service, which requires an emergency response. So you might also hear something a little different from people who practice ITIL or ITSM practices, which is that this is called a major incident instead. Incident communication is how we talk about that incident both internally and to our customers. An incident is resolved when the affected service is functioning in the way it usually does. This only includes the tasks that are actually required to restore the full functionality of the service that was impacted by the incident. All right, thanks so much, Emily. As she mentioned, I'm Chase. I'm a product marketing manager for Status Page here at Atlassian. So Status Page is the communication piece of your incident management process, and today we're going to be going over the basics of incident management, as well as some best practices, and also some general tips and tricks around how you can use our portfolio to handle those incidents a little bit better. To start, we can dive into incident management and what it really is. So here at Atlassian, we define an incident as an event that causes a disruption to or a reduction in the quality of a service, which requires an emergency response. So you might also hear something a little different from people who practice ITIL or ITSM practices, which is that this is called a major incident instead. Incident communication is how we talk about that incident both internally and to our customers. An incident is resolved when the affected service is functioning in the way it usually does. This only includes the tasks that are actually required to restore the full functionality of the service that was impacted by the incident. And an incident post-mortem is done after the incident to determine the root cause and assign actions to make sure that it's addressed before that incident comes back or a similar one begins in the future. When there is an incident, we have a very specific process that we run through to make sure that we cover all of our bases, keep our customers happy, and get back online as fast as possible. The first step in this is called detect. So when we first have an incident issue that's been created and we haven't actually assigned it to an incident manager yet, the incident is in what we call a new state. This is the initial status that we have in our Jira incident workflow as well. And the first thing that they're going to do after that is open communication. So for open communication, what we mean is that the first thing that the incident manager does once they're online is they assign that incident issue to themselves, and then they push the issue forward towards the fixing state. Since this might be a really high-impact incident, we want to make sure we know exactly who's in charge, and so we're really strict on making sure that the person who's the incident manager for this incident actually puts themselves in on the Jira ticket as the go-to source for all things related to the incident as it progresses. The next step is to assess. So after the incident team has communicated to each other, they've set up a Slack channel, they've all gotten on the same page about what the status of the incident is. Now it's their turn to assess the incident so they can figure out which other people they need to tell and start assigning people towards actually fixing the root cause. So every incident manager that comes in asks their team the same question, which is, what is the impact to the customers, and is it internal or external? What are customers seeing? How many customers are affected? When did it start? How many support cases have customers opened? Are there other factors, such as security breach or data loss, and what is the current status of the incident? Here at Atlassian, we have severity levels set up in advance. For us, we have a severity level scale from 1 to 3, where 1 is the largest impact and 3 is the smallest. For severity 3 incidents, we pass those to the team to fix during business hours, but for severity 1 and 2, we're actually going to page team members whether or not they're awake or online so that we can get an immediate fix-up. Whether something is severity 1 or 2 is a little more nuanced, but as time goes on, you get better at deciding whether or not an incident is a big enough deal to be paging someone in the middle of the night. The next step that we take is to communicate about the incident. So we already opened communication channels internally, but now once you've figured out that the incident is actually real, you're going to want to communicate it internally to other departments and also externally as soon as you can. So the goal of the initial internal communication is to get all of the incident response people together in one area. And the goal of external communication is to tell customers that you know something's wrong and that you're looking into it, and that they should look at your status page or other mediums for more information as time goes on. You'll find that once you start communicating about incidents right away once they happen, you're actually going to build more trust with your customers instead of the opposite, and people will believe in your service more as you keep upfront communication lines open. So we actually use status page for both internal and external communications. We have two different kinds of status pages, one for private pages, one for public pages, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but essentially the goal is that you want to get communications up and running as quickly as possible, and we actually use templates in order to do that. So at this point, you've established that there is an incident, you've picked up team communications, you've looked into the situation, decided a severity level, and then you've also already told your customers and some, at least, internal staff that there's an incident in progress. So at this point, you have a team of first responders, and that might be all the people you need to be able to resolve the incident. But a lot of times you'll need to bring other people in, and we often do that by paging them. We call this escalation. And the key component of this is getting an alerting tool. Here at Atlassian, we have an alerting tool called OpsGenie. And so OpsGenie and other similar products allow you to figure out custom on-call schedules so that any given team you work on has a selection of people who are offline but are expected to be contactable in the event of an emergency. So we think this is way better than having one dedicated person all the time to fix certain incidents, because people go on vacation, people happen to be sick. There's a lot of other variables that go into this, and so having a rotating schedule allows it to be A, more fair, and also B, more reliable. Now that we've activated these on-call schedules and we've escalated to certain people, they're going to come online, and now the incident manager is going to delegate a role to them. The reason that we delegate roles to people is so that as soon as they come in to work on the incident, they know exactly what they need to do and realize what kinds of actions they're actually responsible for. So the roles that we use are incident manager, which you've already heard about. We have a tech lead, who's usually a senior technical responder. So they're in charge of coming up with theories about what's broken and why, figuring out what changes need to be made, and then they also run the technical team that is working on the incident. They work super closely with the incident manager, and they're always feeding that person information to make sure that the incident manager knows how to best delegate and escalate in the future. We also have a role called the communications manager, which is usually someone who's familiar with public communication of some kind, possibly customer support or PR, and they're in charge of writing both the internal and the external communications about the status of the incident. You can also create additional roles. These are just the ones that we use, but there are many across the industry, and you can also add additional of each of these roles given the severity of the incident. At this point, you should have a pretty good handle of what's going on and a concrete process in place to start working through the incident quickly. No matter what your incident process is, or even, to some extent, the maturity level of your incident management process, there's a pretty standard set of tools and types of tools that people use. So I'll run through those really quickly. The first ones that you'll see are monitoring and support desks. So there's monitoring tools such as Pingdom or Datadog, and essentially what they'll do is they'll notice a discrepancy in some of the systems that you're running or the services that you have, and they'll integrate with something like OpsGenie, where if there's a big enough anomaly, it'll create an alert right away. Support desks operate fairly similarly in the process, in that they're a way for data to come in, which would be, in this case, someone submitting a support ticket, which can then be escalated and turned into an alert. Alerting, as we just talked about, but alerting is a tool that allows you to push out information to specific people and figure out what the severity level is while doing so. When it comes to instant communication, Status Page is what we use. It's a big player and it's hosted outside of our product ecosystem, so even if we had a major massive incident, we can actually communicate via the status page despite all of our systems being down. The last big one are various types of chat and video tools. So Slack and Microsoft Teams are the two biggest players, as well as video conferencing such as Zoom. Opsgenie actually integrates with Zoom natively, and it also has chat functionality within the app, so you don't have to really switch between
Thanks,
products.
Chase. That was a great overview.